Hello and welcome to another Project Life Process video. Today I'm using the Ellie Studio January kit. I almost said June. And I'm also using the Studio Calico January kit. Although I've already used the Studio Calico January kit for other layouts, but today I'm going to be busting into that Ellie Studio kit for the first time. I, as usual, am going to start with my Project Life templates, which I just used a marker and a ruler to sketch out the lines for a Design A template. And now I'm just placing my photos all across the double page layout just to make sure that there's room to tell all the stories that I want to tell. And I'm thinking about not only design here, like I want it to look balanced with my photos spread out across the two pages, but I also am thinking about how much journaling I think is going to have to go with each of the photos. I have more photos this week than usual, so I'm just playing around with my camera here. By the way, if you notice that I have new footage with a new camera, you've got a keen eye. You're right. Thanks to the generous support of the people who follow me and support me over on Patreon, I was able to make my first big purchase since joining Patreon. I've been over there for, I think, 3 years now. Although I did take a very large hiatus from scrapbooking for a while there. And I bought myself a new camera. So I am just kind of playing around with it and trying to figure out how it works. And over the coming weeks, you might notice I tweak my process a little bit, but this camera is going to save me so much time. I am in love with this camera. Not only does it look fantastic, I hope it looks fantastic on YouTube too. It really looks great in my video editing software here, and it looks great as I'm filming. So I hope that that just carries right on through to YouTube. I know that there's some limits to how good of a quality you can see. Make sure that you press on the little cog in the bottom and that you're watching it in 1080p or whatever the highest level of quality is. Pardon me, I seem to be getting a head cold as we speak, very quickly getting a head cold. Anyhow, I hope I can get through this process video first. So as you can see, I'm just spreading the cards around the page and thinking about trying to balance the different colors. And when I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to use, as you can see, I put out a couple of different options. I'm also looking at the stamp sets from Studio Calico for the past couple of months. I've been using the same stamps all month long, the same 2 stamp sets. And I'm also drawing in some stamps from my own stash as well. And pardon me, it looks like most of these cards are from the Ellie Studio kit, which makes sense because I've already used a lot of the Studio Calico cards, especially my favorite ones. I decided to subscribe to the Ellie Studio kit because I really like the colors. I like the girliness and I like the pinks, and I really wasn't getting that from Studio Calico. I've been a member of Studio Calico since March, and I haven't really, I do really like the cards, but I'm not getting enough of the pinks that I really like. And when they do send me pinks, it's usually like a corally pink. So this is footage from one of my older cameras, so you can really see the difference in the quality, huh? I'm just looking through my scrapbooking stamp collection. Many of these are Kelly Perky stamps and old Studio Calico stamp sets as well. I don't have a whole lot of current new stamp sets. I do have some though. And I'm just looking for any stamp sets that I think might help me tell some of the stories that I plan to tell this month. So this is the stage at which I look through my stamps because I already have a sense of what photos I have and what kind of cards I have, and now I'm just looking for images and phrases and things that can just bump up my storytelling a little bit or accentuate some of the design. And I do have a photo there of my daughter eating avocado on toast, and so I just grabbed a Lawn Fawn stamp set that I have, I think it's called Let's Toast set, because it has an avocado and some toast in it. So I thought I would stamp those out. And since that was my first idea, I decided I would just go ahead and start with that card. I like to just start with whichever one seems the most obvious to me. I don't want to fuss around too much. So I'm using my mini Misty tool here to help me position my stamps in case I need to double stamp. I won't though. And so I'm just going to clean those off with my Lawn Fawn stamp chamois. Put them back so I don't lose those stamps. I'm trying really hard not to lose stamps. I lost one time and I've been paranoid ever since. Now these are my Zig Clean Clear brush. Oh goodness. What are they called? I'm going to find out for you. They are called Zig Clean Color Real Brush Markers, and I have the whole set of them. And I'm just pulling out the colors. I'm pulling out some greens and some browns so I can do some avocado and some toast. Now, whoo, look at this. A third camera angle. One of the benefits of upgrading your camera is you still have the old camera sitting around. So I just thought I'd play around with this. I think that this angle is not going to be as much of a benefit for this kind of footage, but I thought it might be particularly helpful when I'm doing stencils and mixed media work. And sometimes I really wish I had a nice close-up angle close to the work surface. So I'm calling that my desk cam, and I was just playing around with it. So after I run the marker around it, I just add some water with my brush, and then I just sop it up with my paper towel. And this, I'm not attempting to be realistic here, and I'm not doing any kind of shading or anything. I'm just trying to make these images have a little bit of a watercolored look to it. So I'm using the darker green there, and then I'm using a lighter green and then a brighter green, and then I will mix those two light and bright greens together to make it look kind of watercolory. Again, I'm just using different shades of brown on the seed, and then I add water, and then I sop the water up with the paper towel. And that's my favorite approach to coloring. I do that for most of my cards as opposed to trying to do complicated shading, although you can do great shading with those markers. And I do that sometimes. I really like this watercolor look, and it's super, super fast, and you don't have to, think too hard about it. So I find it relaxing. Although I've used these dies, I haven't used these dies. So I just had to break them apart from the set that they were connected to. And here is my Big Shot. I keep my Big Shot on my Raskog, and the top shelf of it, I actually have 5 Raskogs, and you can actually see all 5 of them in this footage. And I just assembled it so that the top shelf, the top bin, is upside down so that it acts as a shelf. Now, IKEA now sells a block topper that you can put on top of your Raskog, so you wouldn't have to do that anymore. You could just get a Raskog and buy the topper to put on top of it. Or I think you can even get custom made toppers and various things these days for your Raskog, but I just did this instead. So as you can see, the avocado and toast is so cute. And as I figure out where it's going to go on the page, or on the photo, then my other little die cut from Ellie Studio is moving around to just make sure that they're balanced. So they'll go in opposite corners. Now I was just looking through my acrylic pieces because I'm looking for a plus. And wasn't it just a couple of years ago that pluses were literally everywhere? Like I remember Amy Tan had a line that has lots of pluses, and pluses were just a huge design element in scrapbooking. And now look at me, I'm just searching and searching, and I cannot find a plus. I looked in my wood veneer, I looked in my acrylic pieces, I looked in my stickers. If I looked really, really carefully at my stickers, I may have been able to find, I know I have some plus stickers, but I just couldn't get my hands on them. So look, I found finally a plus, and it's on this old Scraptastic Kit Club stamp. So I'm just using that same piece of paper, and that's Bristol Smooth cardstock, by the way. That's what I use when I'm using my real brush, whatever they are. my Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers. I wish it didn't have so many names, or I might remember it better. So as you see, I just stamped that out, and the black ink that I'm using today is VersaFine Black Onyx. And it's easier to cut out a shape like this by cutting it into a square first. And so I'm leaving a slight little white outline around the edges of it. So I cut it out into a square, and then I'm just cutting in each of these corners. It's a lot easier than having to try to turn your scissors around. And I really should have been using my little tiny cutter bee scissors, but I guess I just didn't. I didn't use them for no apparent reason. So that little die cut says, "Love this photo." And I'm just leaving it so that it's going off the page, and then I'll trim it down with my scissors. It's always easier to just flip it over so that you can see exactly where it lines up with the photo. And now I'm using my ATG to apply adhesive to the avocado, and then I'll apply a little bit more to the toast. And then I'm going to use some liquid glue for the plus. Ooh, there's a big ice storm here, and I keep hearing ice falling off of our roof, so I hope you guys can't hear that. It's very, very loud. I hope it's not damaging anything. I'll let you know if my roof caves in, and I'll stop recording. So moving on to the next couple of cards. I have these two that I plan to go together. So one is the photo, and then the card next to it will hold the journaling. And so I'm just looking through my home themed stamps that I already pulled out. I just find it easier to pull out a selection of stamps, and then I can kind of work with them as my top, as my frontline bunch of stamps. And only if I can't find what I really need here do I go back to my Raskog and try some more. And so I found this stamp, and it says, "This is my home." And I'm kind of thinking about this card as being kind of like from the cat's perspective, like this is their new home. And so I'm just using a different ink here for something to do. I'm using Memento Tuxedo Black ink. And my thought process was that this is a more liquidy ink than I find that the VersaFine is quite sticky, and this is a new stamp and I didn't condition it, and I was being lazy, so I'm just like, I'll use a juicy ink pad and then it won't stick to my photo. I had a really hard time getting the H to stamp for some reason, but thankfully I'm using my Misty tool, and that allows me to try and try and try again until it's all nice and solid black. Same thing with that arrow. It took a couple of stamps for it to come out nice and solid black, but I just wanted to indicate that it's the cat tree that I'm talking about. And now this beautiful card from Ellie's Studio. This is exactly why I decided to subscribe to Ellie's Studio. This card is kind of like quintessential Ellie's Studio design, or at least that's what I think of what comes to mind for me when I think of Ellie's Studio. And I've been missing this sort of thing, like pink hearts and turquoise, and it still has that kind of strong graphic element and lots of typographic type of stuff on it, but I just like the feminine touch. It's really, really cute. This is my Brilliance Gold ink, and I am stamping the phrase. It says, "Welcome to my house." And it was stamping fine, but it was looking kind of yellow instead of gold. Like it didn't have any kind of metallic look to it. So it occurred to me that my ink pad was probably in need of a re-inking. So I grabbed my re-inker, and a tip that I have for you is if you buy this Brilliance Gold ink, and the same for the white version, there's like an opaque shimmery white that you can get as well. Just get the refill at the same time that you get the ink pad, because these pigment inks, they do need to be refilled quite often. Not every time you use them, like with the white stays on, but really, really frequently. So I love how that looks, and once I juiced up the ink pad a little bit and restamped it, then it got that shimmery metallic look that I was really looking for. So I'm pleased with that now. I am going to add some journaling to that card, but I wanted to wait until the ink dries. So I'm moving on to these other two cards, and the journaling here, I'm going to make a list, because at the top it says things I love about right now. So I decided to just make a list, and I felt like I really should have started the second line down, because then I could have come up with a smaller list. When I just find that from a design perspective, starting on the very top list the top item of the list really makes me feel like I need to fill the whole thing up just to kind of have it feel balanced and not have a random spot at the bottom that isn't balanced with a space at the top. So I'm going to fill this list up. I put work friendships, scrapbooking, kneading kitties, meaning, because that's what the picture is next to it. And I put an arrow. I stamped an arrow. You saw me do that. Time with the fam, simplifying our home, anticipation of a trip, essentialism, planning, work expansion, supervising psychologists, calm, and my girl. And I don't mean calm the app, although I do really like that too. I just mean calm as in feeling calm. And I thought about saying calmness, but I kind of don't think that's a word. I would have to look that up, and I didn't feel like looking it up, so I just left it with calm. Let me know, is calmness a word? Then I struggled a little bit for the last one, and I came up with my girls, which should have been an obvious one. And these aren't in any order, but yeah, sometimes the obvious one is the one that you forget to write down. So I'm just using some temporary adhesive on the back of this card, going back to this card now that the ink has dried. And then I lined it up with the grid on my work mat. And now I'm also lining up this journaling template with the grid as well. And I'm going to draw some lines. I'm drawing those lines with the finer point end of my Mono Twin pen by Tombow. Is it by Tombow? Yeah, by Tombow. This is an oil-based pen, so keep that in mind, I guess. And what I'm writing on this list, or these journaling lines, are a new cat tree without carpet means no more carpet bits all over the house. So moving on to the next card, I have a couple of cards here. So I was originally thinking that this pink card in the middle, could be a card on which half of the journaling applies to one of those photos and the other half applies to the other photo. And I wasn't entirely sure what I wanted to do with it, but I thought I'd do that. But then I immediately didn't like how it looked. It was starting to look too, I don't know, just weird, I guess. So I scrapped that idea and I put the Around Here, which is one of those Ellie Studio die cut pieces that I wanted to use. And I decided actually as I was printing this photo that I would do the journaling along the door here. So the journaling, I'm just handwriting it, and it says, Soph and Liv hang out in each other's rooms, talking and tick-tocking. And I am going to underline it. Kind of like in my wonky underlining, my wonky non-perfect underlining. And it looks, a little messy, especially compared to some of the other lines on this page, but there will be some wonky lines further up on the page, so I think it'll be fine. And now I'm just looking at some stamps because I would like to put something else on this page, but I'm not sure what. I was thinking I would put something in that white space on the wall behind her. Actually, both girls are in that photo, but they had been just like hanging out on the bed, and so you can't see. Sophie's laying on her tummy, and you kind of can't see it from this angle, but if you look closely at the picture, you can see the two girls and 2 of the 4 cats are in this photo, so I thought that was kind of cute. Now, I did have to go back to my Razzcog to find this stamp. It wasn't in my initial selection, but it's from an old Scraptastic or Studio Calico. I think it's from a Studio Calico kit stamp. It says Heart This. I'm going to stamp it a couple times to get a really nice crisp black circle. And now I'm going to go over to my punch rails, which are stored on the wall behind my door. And I'm grabbing a variety of, I didn't know which ones would fit. That one's too big. The other one is too small. This one fits it perfectly, but I'd rather it be just slightly bigger rather than perfect. Oh, I thought about that for a second, but no, we're not going to do that. So I ended up punching it the 3/4 inch punch, which is perfect. I just kind of didn't want it to be perfect, but that's fine. So because I stamped that onto green paper, the heart and this are green on like a black background. So I like that. It looks kind of cool. Better than, like, just a little bit more interesting than if it had been on a white background, in which case the letters and the heart would have been white. So although my original idea was to put it on the wall here, I don't like that. I like it better here. I don't always cover clutter in a photo. I kind of like the clutter to show. I think the clutter is kind of part of Sophie's personality. It shows the things she was into. If you looked really closely at her desk, you'd be able to see what was on her desk. But this time I like this element right here. So you saw that I took one of those old Felicity Jane labels and layered it behind the little circle, used my tiny attacher to add a couple staples for some interest, and I also just layered a wood veneer heart, and I don't even know where those hearts are from. I think they came in a kit, perhaps a hip kit, but they're old and they were in a little glassine bag. So I thought, well, no time like the present to just use something like that up. So I'm using some labels from the Ellie Studio kit, and then a chipboard, that big Life chipboard is from the Studio Calico kit. It says Life Lately. And now I'm looking at my bad day or swear word stamp sets that I have. I have two stamp sets. One is a big stamp set and one is a little stamp set. And they don't all have swear words, but I'm picking out one that says "This sucks" because Scott is there icing his shin. And so my journaling is going to talk about his injury. So I thought I could use this stamp set. And this is going to stamp beautifully. Not quite yet, but after I give it another go, look at that. That's so awesome. I just love that ink. I did have to use some temporary adhesive in order to get that stamp to stick to my Misty door. And just for a little bit of balance, I'm going to put a little gray label here. This is one of the labels from the Ellie Studio kit. And I plan to stamp something down there, but I don't know what yet. And I was auditioning some Ellie Studio stamps there, but I'm actually going to, I think I'm in my Razcog right now looking for something, or I'm not sure. I guess I'm looking at some of the embellishments that are already on my table. And then I saw that this stamp set, which is one of those two I keep using from Studio Calico, I think one is from November and one is from January. Just the stamp sets that come in the kits when you buy them. And it had this little circle with an arrow in it. And so because this card is going to be the journaling that goes along with the photo to the right of it, I'm just having those arrows point to the right so that it's clear that this journaling goes over to the right. And so, pardon my voice, it seems to be... I'm very rapidly developing symptoms of a cold here, just as I sit here. I'll read you this journaling in between my sniffs. Somehow Scott injured his shin recently. At first he thought it was shin splints, but it's not healing as would be expected. X-rays and then a bone scan will hopefully shed some light. And he is just beside himself because he usually runs every other day or every day. And so for him to not be running, he's going a little stir crazy. I'm thinking he needs to get this figured out soon. 'Cause yeah. So as you can see, I can't decide what I'm going to do in that top left-hand corner. So I'm just going to leave it for now. I'll circle back to it before I'm done the page, obviously. And that's a good strategy, especially with Project Life, where there's so many pockets. There is no need to get caught up with perfecting a pocket or coming up with a wonderful, groundbreaking idea. Just if you can't think of anything, just move on and do something else. And then sometimes, as you know, two things can happen. Either, you know, you just come to the end of your project, or you circle back to it and you have more ideas, or as you're scrapping all the other cards, you could be kind of like mulling it over and trying to come up with some ideas. So I decided to put the washi tape under this photo instead of above it. I love this yellow washi tape, and it really brings some yellow over to this side because there's a photo on the other side with that strong yellow from my coach, and this kind of repeats that strong yellow. And you can see I also have another card over there that I plan to use for that. I just used a roller date stamp. It's an old roller date stamp. It doesn't go to 2020. And so I just made it so that the year is a blank spot, and I can just use the month and the day and keep on using that roller date stamp because this is in my project life. So it's clear that it's 2020 because that's the album that this is going to be in. So the journaling here, and this card is from Ellie's studio, and I didn't feel like I needed to really decorate it up. The journaling says, we've been slowing redoing the rec room. This week we added LED lights behind the TV. So cool. And then I wrote the date, January 28th, even though it's stamped beside it, and the place is the basement rec room. So now I'm going to do these two cards, and they sit just like this. So on this day card, the 3x4 is below the 4x6 photo. And I'm just looking for an arrow that is small enough to live in that little space right beside day. And all of these arrows in my little arrow container are way too big. So we're going to put that away. And I knew that I had some puffy arrows, and this one, it's not an exact match to the blue, but it's pretty darn close. It also picks up on that blue is in her little quilt that's on her bed as well. And now I am going to use that Ellie's Studio tab stamp as well. But first I'm going to do some journaling on here. So again, I'm using my template, and this time I'm using the thick end of this mono twin pen. Draw out my lines, and I just left some at the bottom because I was pretty sure I didn't have enough journaling to fill this all the way up. It says, poor Sophie had the flu this week and missed a few days of school. She spent a few days sleeping and watching Netflix. And then there will be a little bit of space at the end of my sentence there, and I like to fill up those spaces with things. I'll either draw a little heart, or in this case, I'm going to take one of these little stamps, and this has 5 stars on it, but I'm only going to ink up 4 of them because only 4 fit in the little space I'm looking at filling. And I'm going to grab my Brilliance gold ink again because I just want that same ink to show up in different places. And so this will be one example of that repetition of that gold ink element. I wanted to use the stamp pardon me, I wanted to use the stamp that has the phrase warm and cozy on it because she looks all warm and cozy, all curled up in her bed like that. And it fits best on the rounded stamp, or of the rounded tab. So that's the one I'm going to use. And what I'm trying to do here is I don't want this to be on white paper. I want it to be on colored paper. So I'm just kind of like thinking, and my scraps are actually a little bit less easy to access. I do still like how they're stored, but I was a little hesitant to pull out my big scrap bin and rummage through it. And when I was pretty sure I had something that was a light blue, I was looking for something light blue or mint or turquoise, like a really, really light turquoise. One of those colors that's already in the layout is what I was looking for. And so I found it. And I was going to do tone on tone stamping and use the Merman ink, which is kind of like the 1, 2, 3rd one in on the top row of my Lawn Fawn stamps there, or inks. But at the last minute, I decided to use this really beautiful blue called Fish Tank. Oh my gosh, I'm in love with this. This is like Island Indigo from Stampin' Up. It's a slightly different shade, but I love it just as much. And so it's still tone on tone. It's just a different tone. It's not the same tone. But that center of the tab, instead of being white, it's now that really beautiful light green. It's so pretty, or light blue, whatever that color is. Oops, see what I did there? Pardon me. I left the image on my Misty tool and put my Misty tool away. So I got it back, and now I am going to use the die that comes with this. It doesn't come with the set, it's a separate purchase, but it's not very expensive, so I bought it. I really like the look of a manually die cut shape. I don't buy coordinating dies for my card making stamp sets anymore because I do have a Brother Scan and Cut, but I really love just the pinched in nice finished edge that you get on a manually die cut piece. So I did get the dies for this one. So I'm just playing around with where I'm going to put it. And I think I'm going to put it right here. I don't usually put tabs in the center of a photo or an item. I usually put it on the edge, the way you would expect a tab to be, but I'm just gonna, live on the wild side here and put my tab in the middle. I'm a renegade. So I gotta put all those stamps back so I don't lose anything, and now I'm on to these 3. And I grabbed that other one because I wasn't sure what I was going to do with it. That kind of tricolor blocking card that's on kind of down below where I'm working. The tricolor one that's in the center is part of the Ellie Studio kit. So, and so are all of these die cuts that I'm using, come from the kit as well. So they all work really beautifully together. And she had gone dress shopping, and I didn't go with her, so they had sent me these. Ran out of staples, so I'll just reload super quick. Especially super quick when it's on 4 times the speed, but so yeah, her dad and her were sending me images of the dresses she was trying on, and I was giving them, my opinions on them. Here's what my journaling says. I was home because Sophie was sick. That's why I didn't go. Although she loved the color of the blue dress, she didn't like that it was strapless. That's in the pink box. And then in the gray box, it says she loved the beading on the purple one, and it wasn't so short. It wasn't too short. And then on the green one, it says she went with the purple dress and surprised me by coming home with it. So they had said that they weren't sure. They had narrowed it down to these 2, and they were going to come home, and maybe they'd go back out tomorrow and buy it. And so she came in pretending to be all kind of glum and not sure what she wanted. And I said, I really like that purple one. And if you like the blue one, that's awesome. And, whichever one you want to go back and get. But man, that purple one was so beautiful. And she brightened right up and went out to the garage and came back with the purple dress. She tricked me. So here I'm using, again, that old Scraptastic stamp set that I had pulled out for something else. It had the plus on it, and I really liked this little box. I thought it would make a good addition to this photo of the ice storm. This is actually a photo from today. And then also in that same stamp set, there are all these weather icons. And so I decided to use this snowflake, only it was sticking too much to the photo and not enough to the glass, like to the piece of plexiglass. So what I decided to do was just kind of shift it around until I got it in the right place, and then stamp it that way, as you just saw. And so I also stamped that in that fish tank ink from Lawn Fawn that I loved so much in the other place. So I decided to use it again. Gonna put those stamps away so I don't lose them. And now, what am I doing? I just can't decide what to do. So I decided to use this other card that was originally destined to be in my top left-hand corner of basically the first card on the page. But I decided I would use it here instead, because I didn't like any of those other cards and I didn't want to go searching for another one. I'd rather use what I already have picked out if I can. And so this is just a screenshot of this is not the final plan. I have another one that's the final plan, but I'll put that in my project life later. But this was kind of like a work in progress of our planned expansion. And so it includes our floor plan plus the floor plan of the suite next to us. And then the journaling says, after our first plan to expand the office fell through, we decided to wait until our neighbors move to take over their space. Little did we know they had already moved out. Now we get to plan our ideal space, which is so much fun. So yeah, it was actually pretty close. We almost moved to a completely different suite on the same floor because we're feeling really crammed and we're expanding, and hard to hire someone when you don't have a place to put them. So anyhow, we were very, very, very close to getting a lease on a whole other space, and we would have had to have moved and build a whole lot, and it was going to be a bit of a pain. And we invested so much in this space that we have right now. But at the last minute, we just pulled the plug. We were very close to signing a lease. And luckily, we just said, no, there's something that doesn't feel right. And we said to ourselves that if ever our neighbor, and who knew, right? Like, if ever our neighbor moves, we'll take over their space and we'll just make do until whenever that happens. And who expects your neighbor to be moving, right? It turns out that suite has been empty for months and we didn't even know it. So anyhow, their lease is up in July and we're going to take it over. I think we're about to sign it. So, and there's no plans to stop. So as you can see, I am using those beautiful turquoise letter stickers from the Studio Calico kit. I believe they're from the January kit. If not, then they're from the November kit. And I don't like those stickers very much. I do like the font, but I don't like how few you get. There's only 2 of some of the letters and there's only 1 of some of them. And it seems to me that you could only make 1, maybe 2 titles with this set of letter stickers. So I'm not too pleased with them for that reason, but I was able to make this February title with it, and I do really like it. So I outlined it with the bold end of my mono twin marker, and I really love how it just pops those letters right off the card. And now I was about to put these out to take pictures when I realized that I think I wanted to put some dimension on this card with all the hearts on it. So I'm picking out some enamel dots, and as you can see, I've got tons of enamel dots. So I'm trying to look for opportunities to use them liberally. And so I am just spreading them in pink, green, and gray all over these kind of like clusters of hearts, so that it's basically clusters of hearts and also enamel dots mixed in there. I'm going to put some grays in here as well. And I always struggle with placement of enamel dots. I'm terrible with deciding where to put them. But then I decided to add some white just because it's actually like a creamy color. And I like how that looks. So here is the final spread. Look at how bright and colorful it is. I love the colors of these cards. And except for that one with February on it, all of these cards, I believe, are from Ellie's studio this time. And here's some more close-ups. Thank you so much for watching this process video. I just have to say a big, ginormous thank you to every single person who supports me over on Patreon. Thank you so much, because filming with this new camera is so much more pleasant, and I think that my videos are going to look a lot better, and I'll have an opportunity to make more videos than I would have using my old system. So thank you so much, and thanks to everybody else who's watching this too, and have a really great scrappy week.